They say the brightest smiles hide the deepest pain. And when you look at Carol Burnett, laughing, performing, making millions smile for over 60 years, you'd never know. You'd never know the little girl who slept on a couch in a tiny room. The child who watched her mother stumble through the door, drunk and angry. The daughter who begged her father to stop drinking, only to watch him slip away into nothing. Behind every laugh Carol ever gave us, there was a tear she swallowed alone. This is her story, and it will break your heart. Carol was born in San Antonio, Texas, in 1933. The Great Depression had swallowed America whole. People were hungry, desperate, broken. And Carol's parents, they were no different. Her father, Joseph, they called him Jody. He was a kind man when he was sober, a gentle soul. But when the bottle touched his lips, he became someone else, someone lost, someone who couldn't hold a job, couldn't hold his family together. Her mother, Louise, they called her Lou. She was beautiful, young, full of dreams. She wanted to be a star, to be someone, to matter. But Hollywood didn't want her, and when the rejection came, she drowned it in alcohol. Carol was just a baby when her parents left her. They packed their bags, headed west to California, to chase dreams that would never come true. And they left their daughter behind, with her grandmother, a woman named Mabel White. Carol called her nanny. Imagine being that small, that helpless, and your parents just leave, not because they don't love you, but because they love something else more. A dream, a bottle, an escape. Carol would spend years wondering what she did wrong, years asking herself why she wasn't enough to make them stay. That's what children do. They blame themselves for the sins of their parents. When Carol was 7, Nanny took her to Hollywood, to be close to Lou, who was living in a rundown apartment building. They called it the Hollywood Arms. It stood on Yucca Street, just blocks from the glittering studios where stars were born. But inside those walls, there were no stars, just broken people. Broken dreams, broken families. Carol and Nanny shared a single room, room 102, 12 feet by 16 feet. That was their entire world. A Murphy bed for Nanny, a couch for Carol, a bathroom so small you could barely turn around. And that was home. Lou lived down the hall, close enough to hear, far enough to pretend everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. Lou drank. Every night, she drank. And when she drank, she became cruel. She would scream at Carol, tell her she was ugly, tell her she was stupid. Words that cut deeper than any knife. Carol would lie on that couch at night, listening to her mother rage, and wonder why her own mother hated her. She didn't understand that Lou hated herself, that the bottle was just a way to forget the life she'd lost, the dreams that died, the daughter she couldn't save. Jody would visit sometimes. He was sweet when he drank. Not mean like Lou, but he was weak. He couldn't work, couldn't provide, couldn't be a father. He would show up with empty pockets and a sad smile, and Carol would hug him tight, hoping this time he'd stay. But he never did. They lived on welfare, government checks that barely covered rent and food. Carol wore second-hand clothes, ate whatever they could afford, watched other children with real families and wondered what that felt like. But Nanny gave her something, hope. Every week, Nanny would take Carol to the movies. They couldn't afford much, but they could afford this, sitting in that dark theater, watching the screen light up with music and dancing and laughter. Carol forgot. She forgot the tiny room, the angry mother, the absent father. For 2 hours, she lived in a different world. A world where people were happy, where problems got solved, where love won, and something inside her stirred. A dream, maybe, just maybe. She could be one of those people on the screen. Maybe she could make others forget their pain, the way the movies made her forget hers. High school was hard. Carol was awkward, tall, skinny, insecure. She felt invisible. But then she discovered something. When she made people laugh, they noticed her. When she did a funny voice or pulled a silly face, suddenly, she mattered. So she became the class clown, the girl who made everyone smile, because if she was making them laugh, they couldn't see her crying inside. After graduation, Carol got in UCLA. She wanted to study journalism. But then she took a theater class, and everything changed. She stepped onto that stage and felt alive. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere, but she didn't have money to stay in school. And then, something miraculous happened. After a performance, a man approached her. He was anonymous. She never learned his name. But he gave her $1,000, an interest-free loan, with 2 conditions: pay it forward someday, and never reveal who he was. That money changed Carol's life. She moved to New York, to chase the dream her mother never caught. And this time, the dream came true. Carol worked on jobs, struggled, auditioned, and slowly, she started to get noticed. A role here, a guest spot there. Then came The Gary Moore Show, and Carol became a star. She created characters, did sketches, made America laugh. And then, in 1967, CBS gave her something almost unheard of, her own variety show, The Carol Burnett Show. For 11 years, 30 million people tuned in every week to watch her sing, dance, make them forget their troubles. She won Emmys, Golden Globes, the love of an entire nation. Carol had everything she ever dreamed of, but inside, she was still that little girl on the couch, still wondering why her parents left, still carrying all that pain. Carol married twice before finding love with Joe Hamilton, a producer on her show. They had 3 daughters together. Carrie, Erdy. Carol thought she could give them the childhood she never had. Stability, love, a real family. But addiction runs in families, like a curse passed down through blood. Carol's father was an alcoholic, her mother was an alcoholic, and now, her daughter Carrie was following the same path. Carrie was beautiful, talented, full of life. But at 13 she started using drugs. Carol watched in horror as her daughter spiraled. Rehab, relapse, rehab again, 8 times in and out of treatment centers. And all Carol could think was, did I do this? Did I work too much? Was I not there enough? Was I too much like my parents? The guilt at her. But Carrie fought. She got sober at 17. And for 20 beautiful years, they were close. They wrote a play together based on Carol's childhood. They worked, laughed together. Carol thought they'd made it, that the curse had been broken. And then, in 2001, Carrie got sick. Lung cancer. It spread to her brain. Carol watched her daughter, her baby, waste away in a hospital bed. And on January 20, 2002, Carrie died. She was 38 years old. They say you never get over losing a child. Carol didn't. She couldn't get out of bed for weeks. The world expected her to keep smiling, keep performing. But how do you smile when your heart is shattered? How do you make people laugh when you're drowning in grief? She had a play to finish. Hollywood Arms. The play she and Carrie wrote together. It was supposed to open, and Carrie was supposed to be there. But Carrie was gone. Carol didn't want to do it. But she made herself get on that plane, made herself go to New York, and she prayed. She asked Carrie for a sign. Something to let her know she wasn't alone. When Carol arrived at her hotel, there was a bouquet waiting. Birds of Paradise. Carrie's favorite flower, the one she had tattooed on her shoulder. At dinner, the waiter brought champagne. The label read, Louise, Carrie's middle name. And on opening night, it rained. Carrie and Carol had always loved the rain. Carol stood there, rain falling around her, and she knew Carrie was still with her. But knowing that didn't stop the pain. Years passed. Carol kept working, kept smiling for the cameras, but the sadness never left. And then, history repeated itself. Her daughter Erin, Carrie's sister, fell into the same trap: drugs, alcohol, addiction. Just like their grandmother, their aunt, their sister. Erin had a son, Dylan, a beautiful boy who deserved better than the chaos his mother's addiction created. In 2020, Carol and her husband Brian had to go to court to fight for custody of their grandson because Erin was too sick, too broken, too lost. Carol was 87 years old, an age when most people are resting, enjoying their grandchildren. But Carol was back in court, fighting the same battle she'd fought decades ago with Carrie. Watching her daughter destroy herself, just like Carol's parents had. Watching her grandson grow up in the same chaos Carol grew up in, the same tiny rooms, the same fear, the same pain, history repeating, like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Eventually, Carol had to step back. The guardianship was given to someone else, because she was too old, too tired, and the cycle kept spinning. Carol is 92 years old now. She still works occasionally, still makes appearances. She's won every award imaginable: the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Kennedy Center Honors, the Mark Twain Prize. There's even an award named after her at the Golden Globes. She's donated to charities, given scholarships to students who remind her of herself. Poor kids with big dreams and no money. She's tried to pay forward what that anonymous man gave her all those years ago. But all the awards in the world, all the standing ovations and accolades, they don't fill the holes. They don't bring back Carrie. They don't heal Erin. They don't give Carol back her childhood. She recently donated all her awards to ULA, over 140 of them. Emmys, Golden Globes, Grammys, she gave them all away. Maybe because they don't mean what they used to. Maybe because she's realized that fame and success can't save the people you love, can't change the past, can't stop the pain from being passed down through generations. Carol lives quietly now, with her husband Brian. They do crossword puzzles, watch old movies, the same movies Nanny took her to see all those years ago. She misses her daughters, her grandson, her friends. She thinks about Carrie every single day. She never leaves me, Carol once said. I just feel her. But feeling her isn't the same as holding her. People see Carol Burnett and they think of laughter, of sketch comedy and musical numbers and that famous ear tug she did at the end of every show, a signal to Nanny, a way of saying, I love you, across the miles. But they don't see the little girl who slept on a couch, the daughter of two alcoholics who died alone and forgotten, the mother who lost a child to the same disease that took her parents, the grandmother who had to fight for her grandson because addiction never stops. It just keeps going, generation after generation, taking and taking and taking. Carol spent her entire life making people happy. She gave everything she had to bring joy to others. But when the cameras turned off, when the audience went home, she was still that scared little girl in room 102. Still wondering why her mother was mean, still wishing her father had stayed, still missing Carrie, still praying for Aaron, still carrying all that weight, all that sadness, all that loss. They say comedy comes from pain, that the funniest people are often the saddest inside. Carol Burnett is proof of that. She took all her trauma, all her heartbreak, all her loneliness, and she turned it into something beautiful, something that made millions of people smile. But the cost was everything. Her childhood, her parents, her daughter, and now at 92 she sits in the quiet, surrounded by memories, some beautiful, some unbearable, all of them hers. This is the tragedy of Carol Burnett, not that she failed, but that she succeeded. She became everything she dreamed of, everything her mother wanted to be. She conquered Hollywood, conquered television, conquered the world. But she couldn't conquer the one thing that mattered most, the curse that followed her family, the addiction that stole her parents and her daughter, and now threatens her grandson. So when you see Carol Burnett's face, when you watch old clips of her show, when you see her smile and hear her laugh, remember the price she paid for every one of those smiles. Remember the little girl who had nothing but dreams. Remember the mother who lost her child. Remember the grandmother still fighting battles she thought she'd already won. And remember that behind every great comedian, behind every person who makes us laugh, there's often a story that would make us cry. Carol Burnett gave us 60 years of joy. But joy was something she spent a lifetime searching for herself, and maybe never truly found. At 92, Carol Burnett is still here, still breathing, still fighting. But the weight of it all, the weight of a lifetime of loss, it never gets lighter. It just becomes part of who you are, part of every smile you give, part of every laugh you share. And late at night, when the world is quiet, when there's no one left to perform for, the sadness comes, and Carol Burnett, the woman who made the world laugh, sits alone with her tears, remembering, always remembering, everything she lost, everything she tried to save, everything she couldn't hold on to, no matter how hard she tried. This is her tragedy, and it's beyond heartbreaking.